Live, you are live.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Sunset Safari. For those of you joining our live stream for the first time, my name is Jamie and I have VM on camera with me this afternoon. James is out and about with Brian on camera looking for various wonderful magical things to show you. We're coming to you live from Djuma and Arathusa game reserves, which is in the Sabi Sands, which all falls under the Greater Kruger National Park area of South Africa. An area famous for its wildlife conservation, one of the highest lion concentrations in the world, and the Sabi Sands in particular, of course, famed for its big cat and in particular incredible leopard sightings. And the wonderful thing about it, the fact that it is live, is that we never know what we're going to expect. VM and myself, over the last few months, have had some incredibly unexpected sightings. Wild dogs, for example, just appearing out of nowhere, or lions and leopards coming together to try and, or accidentally meeting together to try and scavenge off a kill. So you just never know where the afternoon is going to take you. Not only are we live, but we are also interactive, which means you can send through your questions or your comments on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@WildEarthTV and let us know what your thoughts and feelings are. As you can hear, it is very, very windy out here in the Sabi Sands. It is, however, not quite taking the edge off the afternoon heat. It's 34 degrees in centigrade, which is 93 in Fahrenheit. So despite the fact that we find ourselves right at the end of summer and more into autumn, it is still very, very warm. Jim, you've got a grasshopper on your viewfinder.
Yeah, no.
I'm going to try and hold said grasshopper, but I'm going to wait until there's a patch of shade and a nicer view before I do that, in case it turns into absolute chaos trying to catch the thing. So for the moment, you'll just have to be content to know that VM has a passenger on his camera. My plan, as it stands, although as you know, plans never quite work out as you think they might, my plan for the afternoon is to do some checking of the various water holes. Now this morning, apparently, there was one Birmingham boy on Djuma, or around Sydney's dam actually, but he has since crossed into Simbambili. And so we have to find ourselves other wonders. And a Birmingham boy, by the way, which I keep throwing these terms out without actually explaining for new viewers. Birmingham boys are a coalition of male lions. Young males that have just conducted a successful takeover of this area and have been doing some rather vigorous defending over the last few nights. Treehouse Dam has buffalo. It definitely doesn't come as a surprise in this kind of weather. Hello, buffalo. Let's go and have a look at them from the dam wall. Just so in case you were wondering what James Hendry might have planned for the afternoon, well, I'm going to let him tell you most of it himself. But for now, he's doing what James does best, which is wandering around on foot looking for the hyena den. Our lovely hyenas finally made good on the fairly ever-present threat of disappearing without a trace. We're going to have to see if we can't find their den again. That is what James is currently occupied doing. Hello, boys. Don't get up on my account, it's okay. You can stay there, you looked very comfortable. Nothing more refreshing looking than the muddy brown of Treehouse Dam. Oh, is your passenger dismounted, VM?
No, he's still there.
Is he still there? Oh, he's on the other side.
Yes, he's watching me.
He's watching the buffalo. Oh, he's watching you.
I think he wants to jump in my hat.
If he does, can I have your hat? Perfect, thank you. We pretty much consistently every single afternoon located buffalo around Treehouse Dam. These old buffalo bulls, fairly clearly distinguishable from the females, both from the obvious way. Also the thickness of the horns at the top of their skull. And then, of course, the fact that they occur, if you do see a very small group of buffalo, it's unlikely to be females. They much prefer to be in these large breeding herds. And it's only when they've been chased by lions that they tend to separate off into smaller groups. For the most part, however, pretty common to see buffalo gentlemen like this wallowing in a dam in groups of 2s or 3s, up to a group of about 15, 16. And fluttering about them, the ever-present ox pickers, cleaning away any ticks or parasites that might be there. I also thought while I was here I might have a look for the the water monitor lizard that Liam and myself saw here hunting frogs around Treehouse Dam. I don't see him, however, this afternoon. He seems to have vanished. Mostly, every now and again, I just see the little poke of a terrapin head sticking out. Also noticed I haven't seen any yellow-billed ox pickers for a while. I think that's just purely unlucky. It's a different breed. The one that we've got sitting on the buffalo at the moment are the red-billed ox pickers. Oh, we've got, ow, biting flies, sorry. That one was a particularly sore one. That isn't what I was going to say. I was going to say we've got two different types of bovid-like creatures on the Sabi Sands. One is the buffalo. The other is the tallest animal on Earth, the African giraffe. And Jeannie was wondering, where have all the giraffe gone? It's a very valid question. They come and they go. They move about. I don't know where all of the giraffe has gone. The last giraffe I saw was a couple of days ago on quarantine, and it managed to get away before I even thought about getting it on camera. It was before the start of the sunset safari. And to be honest, I haven't seen any more since. I'm not sure if that's because the vegetation is just a little bit thicker, so they're harder to see. I don't think so, however. I think they have just moved about. And because we've had all this rain, it has most definitely caused a decrease in our general game sightings. So by that I mean all the antelope species, the giraffe, the buffalo. They don't have to go as far, or they don't have to travel to very selective water points, which means they don't have to travel to them. Essentially, they can stay quite happily in the thick, dense vegetation of the blocks and just hide out there. And I think that's where all of our giraffe have gone. And we've never had tremendous numbers of giraffe to start with anyway. Buffalo looks as though he's got very stiff shoulders. I don't know if it's just the way that he's walking or if he's actually got a bit of an arthritic limp. Okay, let's see what other wonderful things we can find resting in the shade. And that is where I suspect we will find most of the animals, whether it be in the shade or wallowing in these larger dams and pans around the area. Oh, the one thing about these biting flies, yeah?
Grasshopper is now on my person.
The grasshopper is now on your person. Okay, let's stop just on the side of the dam wall because it always worries me. Liam has now acquired his grasshopper friend, and he's trying to operate the camera one-handed. Here we go. Got him. Thank you. Okay, now we can show you this grasshopper. The last time I tried to do this, he jumped all over my face. It's exactly the same type as well. Here we go. A little grasshopper, little hopper. Not quite the exact same species as the one that we had before. Well done, Liam. Just going to rest my hands on here. Look at him weighing up the possibilities here. He's not quite sure where to jump or which way to go. I think he's thinking about jumping onto my cap. There's a big confusion between sort of crickets and grasshoppers. Oh, he's cleaning his mandibles. Confusion between crickets grasshoppers, hoppers, and I mean basically a hopper is a type of grasshopper, and katydids. Katydids have the very, very long antenna. You can see, oh, hello, oh, I feel as though he's, look at him swaying from side to side. I feel a jump is imminent. He's really checking me out. All those compound eyes. Oh, here he goes. Is he going to jump? Yep. Is he on my hat now?
Yes.
Here we go. I had a feeling he was aiming for my hat. And I felt something very small. Here he goes. Is this the preparation for the next spring? Is he going to go? Are you going to stay? Oh, the indecision. But yes, you've got a nice view of his short antenna from this profile shot. You can see what I mean. That's fairly typical of a grasshopper.
Can you hit a little bit more to me? There we go.
Here we go. Now I'm trying to keep my head really still. It's surprisingly difficult to do when you're aware of it. You know, when somebody asks you to hold something dead still and all of a sudden you can't quite manage it. I feel like he's looking at you again. Like he wants to launch himself back towards you.
Maybe he likes me.
I think he does probably like you. In fact, he's probably very upset with me for removing him. I don't think, however, that I can conduct a game drive with him on my head the entire time. I feel as though he might be at risk of injury. So let's try this very gently. Hello, buddy. I think perhaps it's... No, we've been through this. Now it's just my head you're aiming at. Okay. Can I put you safely down? Would you like to come on the safari as well? It's like, you know, the anticipation of waiting for something to happen, the way that horror movies kind of capitalize on that build-up, the intensity of the music starting to build, that is what it's like looking down at this grasshopper, because I know he's going to jump, and I feel like he's going to jump straight into my eye. Hopefully he won't. Oh, is he going to do it? The swaying stopped at least. The way he feels his way along the hat. Now if I turn him, he keeps turning to watch me. Look at that. I've got his body facing Viam, but his head is still looking straight at me. So they've got facial recognition powers just like we do. And he knows where my eyes are. I'm now in a staring contest with a grasshopper. I told you things don't always go according to plan. Let's turn you right round. Will you still face me, or are you going to? Yeah, sort of. He doesn't feel quite so threatened anymore. There's the sway again. And I guess that sway is to give his eyes different perspectives and different points to focus on so that he can judge distance safely when he decides to jump. Okay. All right, buddy. Let's try and... Okay, Viam, he clearly he does like you. He's all yours. Oh.
That's my head.
Now he's on your... He's now under Viam's hat. This is hilarious. That's where he wants to be, and that's where he's going to stay. So I guess that's where he'll leave him, and he can come on the safari with all of you. In the meantime, I do believe that James is back from his slight walking tour. Let's find out how that went and what he has to say to you all.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon to you. I'm starting off differently today because the video microphone I'm wearing is of such superb quality. I have been on a lengthy walk through this block to my right-hand side, your left-hand side, and what I've been looking for is the hyena den. I have failed to find the hyena den. In fact, I only found 2 termite mounds in half an hour, which is not a particularly good return, I don't really feel. So I'm not really sure what to say, other than the fact perhaps the tracks over the next road were obliterated by elephants earlier this morning. My name is James Hendry. On camera is Brian. Hello, Brian.
Hello, James.
Brian is dressed in a very summery kind of outfit, and he seems to have painted a hedgehog.
No.
Not?
An owl.
An owl. Sorry about that. An owl on his thumb.
They do look quite similar.
An owlish thumb.
And
yes.
owls.
Yes, okay. I found this piece of wire. This was thieved by a hyena out of the camp, very clearly, placed in the bush along the same path on which I was following the drag mark. Anyway, we will keep our search up over the next few days. I think our plan, though, from here is going to be going to Arathusa and see what we can find over there. And this is a beautiful example of Aristida junciformis, the three-orn. Is it not beautiful, Brian?
It's splendid.
Thank you. Wonderful. Tastes like nothing. It's very poor grazing grass, as we all learned this morning. So you are welcome to it, and please remember, as with Jamie, you're just as live with us as you are with her. Hashtag Safari Live if you want to talk to us on the tweet. Otherwise, questions at WildEarthTV on the email, or the YouTube chat stream works very well as well. Okay, here we go. Arathusa, we are on our way. If we can start the car. Here we go. Are you ready, Brian?
I'm ready.
Now, Aaron, you're wondering about the mating leopards from Sunrise Safari. We didn't see them, of course, everybody else, especially those of you who missed the morning drive. They were seen to the south of us on Hoffman's, which is a reserve just to the south. Tingana seems to be with Tundi, so she's obviously not fallen pregnant yet, despite his attentions last month. So Jamie did head down that way. She headed towards Treehouse Dam, and so I think that they probably might pop out there sometime during the course of the evening. Remember, they are cats, so they will do quite a lot of sleeping in the middle of the day. They were heading north towards us. They didn't cross during the course of the Sunrise Safari, and they certainly weren't around when I went down there at about 11:30. I was there around on foot, and I couldn't find sign of them there. So we'll keep checking the area during the course of the afternoon. We'll monitor the radio on that particular channel that they use in that area, and we'll keep going and looking for that, Aaron. The other interesting thing that I discovered while I was on foot today, and Brian will be quite interested in this, of course, because we have been attacked, savaged, mauled indeed, by thousands of flies. In fact, all around Brian's head as I speak are thousands of flies. Now, Brian said to me today, they seem to just come out of nowhere. And indeed, that is precisely what they do. They sit on a bush and they wait. And this is what Brian and I were postulating they did this morning. And as I ran past a bush today, suddenly I was inundated. I was going along the road. I was in a beautiful, clear, lovely air. And suddenly there were 500 flies around my head. And it happened as I went past a bush. They'd all been resting there. And that's obviously their strategy. So they'll sit on a bush, and then when some form of animal life goes past, they will buzz off and fly all around it. So if it was a buffalo or an impala, or in fact a human being, that's what they do. And that's quite interesting. I've always wondered how they managed to get hold of us, and that's what they do. They lurk, waiting in an opportune place, and as you go past, they land on you. Then you can get rid of them, of course, either by driving at a great speed, which is dangerous and unpleasant if you happen to be watching the screen, or you can spray them with various kinds of insect repellent. Brian, you've got your insect repellent today. Brian brought this with him. Yes, we'll probably have to use it a little bit later. Anyway, that's the story for this afternoon. You are most welcome. It is lovely to have you on board today, as it is every day. I think if I'm correct, Alex tells me that yesterday we had 5,000 viewers. Now, that's quite a lot for one normal afternoon safari. I just want you to quickly have a look here, if you don't mind. It's not particularly interesting, but to say that when I left here 2 weeks ago, this was a clear, crystalline pool. So it wasn't muddied by buffalo or warthogs. It was very clear, and there was a woodland kingfisher sitting just above it, waiting for insects and perhaps the odd frog to eat. Now it is dry, and without wind, at least without rain, it will obviously dry out further during the course of what we're heading into, which is the dry season. I'm hoping that we'll have just a little bit more rain before the end of the season. But who knows, we might even have winter rain. The weather is all haywire, the world is all haywire. I must just thank Judy H, of course, for all of her flower identification. She's a genius. Thank you, Judy. Lucy in Indiana, you want to know what the cameraman does while he's alone when the presenter goes off walking, trying to track something. Brian, would you like to answer that question?
Not very much.
Not
it. We look and we wait in anticipation for the presenter to return with the splendid news of finding something.
There we go. And in this case, very disappointing news. Brian's face dropped like a stone.
I was thoroughly let down.
So it goes. Thank you, Lucy, for that. Now, the hyena den, I think, is in this block, but like I was saying, I was walking through there, and of course you go basically from termite mound to termite mound to see if there's any evidence of excavation. And there are so few termite mounds in that particular area because it seems to be a seep line, which means that the soils are shallow, there's a lot of subsurface rock, and that means that the termites, which like well-drained soils so that they can dig down to the water table and then build those mounds, they won't be in that area. So I think that the drag mark, which was, there was a hyena dragging something around there this morning, and I think it probably goes quite a long way north. Anyway, they'll turn up eventually, don't worry. Alex says that he was teasing about the viewers yesterday, not 5,000 watched. He thought that was a very amusing April Fool's joke. Of course, he made it after 12 o'clock in the afternoon, which unfortunately makes him the fool. I'm not going to tell him that because he's a very dangerous Russian, but well, I'll tell you that and we'll just keep it to ourselves. That's right. Right, we're now on the northern boundary. To the right, the fire break, which has not been maintained much. I think it will have to be maintained. Now, many of you have asked, during the course of the drought that we had, I mean, I know it doesn't look like it, but we're basically still having a drought because we haven't had nearly as much rain as we would normally have at this time of year. Many of you asked about fire and the risk of possible fire in the area. Now, if you look around here, you can see that compared with 2 or 3 years ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, there is a lot more grass. Now, grass, when it gets long like this and then dries out, is the fire hazard. So, now I would say to you, yes, if it goes into the dry season and all of this grass turns to brown, to that lovely golden brown color that it does in the winter time, then it will be a fire hazard. But with it so short like it was before we had the rain, there was absolutely no fire hazard, no matter how dry it got. I stopped to look there because there are a lot of hyena tracks around here. And Brent reckons that they've gone north into Biffle's Hook, and I distressingly am starting to agree with him. Lots of hyena tracks going up and down. Biffle's Hook is only just off to the right-hand side of your screen there, probably about 100 meters. Now, Biffle's Hook, to those of you who don't know, is the northern section of the Sabi Sands, and we are unfortunately not allowed to traverse there, but the hyenas may have found some salubrious accommodations in that area. I quite like the term salubrious accommodations, don't you, Brian?
Rolls off the tongue.
It rolls off the tongue. Yeah, plenty of young hyena tracks too, small ones. They might just be in here, you know. Anyway, we will keep looking. Just hoping it's not a wild dog track, no, it's a hyena track. They might just be just inside here somewhere. We'll keep an eye out. But let's, for the meantime, go to Arathusa and see what we can find there. I haven't been there since my return from leave, which was actually only 2 days ago, so that's not surprising. Hold on tight, big bump. Don't spill your drinks. Now there were also, dwelling in this clearing, the left right-hand side of your screen, some warthogs and two little sounders, or a sounder of 2 sows and 5 piglets. But I don't see them anymore now. I wonder if they have either been devoured in my absence or moved on to a different place. But this is now an ideal place for a warthog to live, because there's grass and it's what we call a sodic area, so lots of sodium in the soil, very rich, good grasses. Warthogs tend to love this sort of area. Let's have a quick look at Sydney's dam before we head to Arathusa, see if anything's coming down to drink. It is about 34 degrees Celsius. That is 93 Fahrenheit, if I'm not mistaken. There's more drag mark. There's an elephant there. That's a very wonderful question that I'm going to ponder as we stop at the dam here. There is an elephant there. I'm not sure where the lion went from this morning. Oh, he went into some Bambili, that's right. There is an elephant. Brian, you'll see him. Genevieve's question from New York is a lovely one, and it is, have I taken on any lessons from observing the animals out here? Have any of the animals given me something to think about and sort of apply to my own life? Genevieve, I suppose the most obvious answer, and it might be a little bit twee, is to say that, you know, an animal out here lives for the moment. It is unable to worry about the future. It's unable to worry about the past. Well, I guess in the case of an elephant, it can worry about the past if it's had a traumatic past, but I don't think they dwell too much on that, because the business of surviving every day is such and is so difficult that you can't really concentrate on anything else. And I think that's a very good lesson to have learned from the animals out here. So there is the elephant there, of course, seems to have a floppy ear. You see that, Brian? That broken cartilage. So we know him. I think he's a young bull, and he's got definitely some broken cartilage in the ear there that has resulted in him looking slightly like a basset hound. He does look a little bit like a dog, doesn't he? Let's have a look with these spanky new Justin Bieber binoculars that I've got. Yes, young bull, not in great condition. In fact, in very, very poor condition. Bones sticking out all over the place. He is coming this way, so I think we'll just wait here and look. I say he's young just because he's small, smallish. I mean, he's probably about 4.5 to 5 tons. That's 4,500 kilograms. You can multiply that by 2.2 if you want to get to the pounds. Roughly 11,000 pounds. But you can see his spine sticking out there, his hips sticking out. With these binoculars, I can see a tick under his left eye. That's not true. I'm joking. I can't really see a tick under his left eye. He's coming this way. Let's wait for him, I think. Although he'll probably stop and have another drink. But you can see there, even at this distance, the bones sticking out. So that trunk, I don't know why that cartilage would have broken, it might, you know what, it might be even neurological. It might be that there's some kind of neurological defect and the muscles have just withered or something like that in the trunk, in the ear. But he's got all kind of, he's got a sticky out belly at the back. Shame. We might have to call him Quasimodo. What do you think, Brian? Think Quasimodo's a good name for him? Not so much. Okay, so we won't call him Quasimodo. Kirsten says we've had better names. Poor fellow. And that there, where you can see him turning there, he's looking at us. Not sure what he's looking. I mean, he's still quite a distance away. He's about, well, he's probably about 300 meters away. 1,000 feet. There's one thing this job does for you is improves your times tables immensely because of the need to convert continuously between the imperial and metric systems. All right, he's gone behind the bush. I think we'll push on now. Okay. All right, let's head across to Jamie while we get out of this particular area. We're going to go down towards the gate and then down south. We'll go across to Jamie. She's got a bovid. I'll see you later.
I just had to stop for this particular buffalo. We've spoken so much about him. I think it was yesterday on the Sunset Safari, and I find myself drawn to him once again. I mentioned how I never in a million years thought that I would be recognizing individual buffalo by their looks when I first started working this job. But now, I mean, he is the most distinctive buffalo I have ever seen, and he is just so weird looking. I've realized that his boss, so the base of his horns, kind of looks a little bit like a brain sitting on the top of his head. And it's really, he's even more distinctive because he always reacts far more, not nervously, but just more alertly to our presence when compared to the rest of the buffalo. Yes, I'm talking about you. I mean, the buffalo on the left, now he's a normal looking buffalo. Although he does sort of look old and wise, like a Gandalf or another such character. Or that big dog in the Never-Ending Stories name I can't remember right now. Alka.
Alka or something.
Alka.
That was with V.
Alka.
Oh yes, something like that.
Something like that. But that's, can you see what I mean? He does sort of look a little bit like that. But that's a normal looking buffalo. The one on the right, our friend on the right, is just so distinctive. He's impossible to mistake. His boss, I think, it's because his boss is so large. Brian offered up a suggestion yesterday that perhaps it was an actor from one of the Twilight movies. I'll leave it for you to work out which particular one we mean. And I can see that very clearly. Brent had his own different description, which involved a politician, not a South African politician, but a politician elsewhere. Again, I'm being careful and diplomatic about which names I mention. So again, that's up to you, which particular politician he might be referring to. Either way, he is the most distinctive buffalo, and I'm pretty sure that thick, large boss of his, and the way that it extends, first of all, it extends quite high up, so there's plenty of impact space, and then it descends quite low towards his eyes, so he's got an additional protection that none of the other buffalo bulls have. And I do wonder whether or not it confers some kind of advantage to him in terms of clashing with other males, because at the end of the day, that is why buffalo males have these thick horn bases at the bottom. It's for fighting each other. He's got perfectly curled horns. I mean, they are beautifully symmetrical. And he's also relatively skin disease free. He doesn't really have any bald patches or even slightly balding patches. He's a perfect uniform dark glossy brown. So he's obviously a very healthy individual. He also, just from watching his behavior over the last 2 days, he is far less comfortable with oxpeckers than the others. I don't know. I mean, all of that is maybe just because I've been observing him so closely because he's got such peculiar looks. But he does, either way, he does fascinate me. The buffalo are having an amazing time in the Twin Dams Mud Wallow Spa. There's actually something I didn't notice before, but there's actually even more in the muddy parts in front of me, sort of hidden behind that leadwood bush. But yeah, there's some more buffalo there. Let us continue on. I didn't actually need to stop for more buffalo bulls, but it just sort of happened that we encountered him again. Also learned a great deal just by being able to identify that particular individual, but I've observed a great deal about the way in which buffalo bulls move around an area, because he seems to do a big loop from Twin Dams to Treehouse Dams to these pans and then back again. Just went through a bit of a shaky signal patch there, but I was just about to say that our grasshopper friend has only just left us, which is such a pity, because he showed such an attachment to VM that I figured we would do the rest of the game drive with him. We'd even come up with a name. We were going to call him Hopscotch, and he was going to enjoy the safari alongside us, and I was going to ask for his opinion on things. Unfortunately, I think he has finally left VM. He might be around here somewhere. I don't know where he went. Perhaps he found himself a greener tree or something. Does seem a pity. I think I'm going to go down to Mawati and just do a little bit of a trip through there, since it is so very pretty. Or maybe not just here. Not if we were struggling with signal so close to Twin Dams. We'll hold off on that plan. We'll try it a bit further up the road. While we continue on our way there, Genevieve actually asked James a really interesting question that I've been thinking about while we were sitting with those buffalo. So Genevieve, who's watching in New York, I thought your question was a brilliant one about whether we've ever observed anything or learned anything from animal behavior that we have then gone on to apply in our everyday lives. And it's a brilliant question. I would love to know. I think the biggest one for me is that constant observation and trying to read body language of not just animals but people as well in my immediate surroundings. That, of course, is how animals communicate. It's what we spend most of our day-to-day lives doing. Let me just go through this dip. Spend most of our working lives observing animal behavior, and I think in a way that has carried through to, or at least for my personal interaction with people as well, that I'm always very, very conscious of their body language and not just the words that they're saying. And then I thought about other things, the resilience of animals in the face of food poison or potential food poisoning, and how incredibly fragile we have become as human beings. I mean, I grew up in a city with everything very sterilized and clean, and it's only in moving to, not only, but it's especially since moving to the bush and moving out of the city and spending time in some good clean dirt with
I'm afraid Jamie has gone black screen. Not sure why. She's probably approaching Buffelshoek Dam, and Wendy for some reason doesn't like Buffelshoek Dam. Trying to hear what is going on with the radio on this side of the reserve. Not very easy. but we will keep you posted as the afternoon progresses. At the moment, doesn't seem to be much going on. But it is beautiful to be on the northern boundary of Arathusa, southern boundary of Simbambili, and mainly because the last time I was here, it looked like the Sahel Desert. And now it looks like the green valleys of Wales. Hello, Christy. Nice question about the boundaries. You say, why are there boundaries? Surely we just share the land between each other. Well, Christy, no, unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be how it is. And that's largely because human beings, of course, are very, what's the word, Brian? They're very keen to own things. And of course, once you own property, then you don't want somebody else on your property, and then they in turn don't want you on their property, and you have this complicated arrangement where people don't want each other on each other's properties, and then they go through complex arrangements of negotiating traversing rights depending on how big their properties are. And so that's basically what's happened here in the Sabi Sands, where there are hundreds, literally, of different individual landowners, some of whom, of course, have extremely strained political relationships with each other, others of whom are very friendly and they have very kind of gentlemen's agreements over their traversing. It's all so complicated. Wild Earth tends to keep its nose very clear of any of that stuff. But basically, because it's not government land and it's broken up into very small pockets of land, all privately owned, that's why there are boundaries we're not allowed to cross, but the animals can. The other reason, of course, and it's quite simple for Wild Earth, is that we can't go everywhere. Even if everybody said, you know, you're welcome to drive anywhere you want, we couldn't do that. Look at this glorious mud. Brian, is it not glorious? We couldn't go anywhere we want because, of course, the broadcast range of our vehicles and the towers that we have is limited to a certain extent. And while we could certainly cover the Sabi Sands and broadcast equipment, we don't have the infrastructure at the moment to do that. There is some glorious, smelly, delicious mud. If I was a warthog, I would be lying down in this mud right now, given the heat. On we go. Now, hello, Lady Macbeth. Your question dovetails very nicely with the last one about private property. And you want to know about controlled burning, and is there controlled burning in the Sabi Sands? Well, yes, there is. But because each landowner thinks that he's a bit of a conservation expert, and in some cases they are, in some cases they aren't, and because there is such an enormous variation in what's the right thing to do and what's the wrong thing to do, what you find is that the burning regimes on the different properties are very different. So some people don't burn at all, some people burn once a year, and it's all very difficult to kind of maintain one big picture in the Sabi Sands. Whether you should or shouldn't burn, I think there's definitely a very strong case for it every so often, and some people certainly burn. And where I used to work down in the south of the reserve, where the properties are quite a lot bigger than they are up north here, we definitely did burn quite extensively. But so the natural situation would have been where it would be like this at this time of the year. Then over the course of the winter, the grass will dry out, and then by the time September, October came along, you get lightning strikes with the first storms that came through. And those lightning strikes may or may not create a fire. I'll carry on with the story just now. Let's go quickly across to Jamie with the Nyala.
We've just come across a group of barking impala, alarm calling straight into the drainage line. All right, everybody keep your ears or your eyes peeled. They've seen something, and it's probably a leopard. Looking down in here. Let's just stop for one moment and just listen again. They were looking right where we're looking. one of Karula's favorite spots. Where is this leopard? Almost inevitably, a barking Inyala is barking at a leopard. Unless it's a lion, which could also be a factor or a possibility. In this drainage line, I'm going to go a little bit up the drainage line, see if we can't look back. If I can't see anything, I might need to go for a little bit of a stroll, just to double check. They were looking exactly in where I've stopped here, but that doesn't mean that the leopard hasn't moved away. They came up out of the male came up out of the drainage line, and they were giving that boo, boo sound that Inyala do when they're alarmed. Let's just go poke our nose. There is an easy route in here. Let's go poke our nose in here. It's the wonderful thing about leopards in the afternoons is that they do move about far more than the other big cats. Everybody keep looking, particularly since the leopard was spotted. We're looking for that flick of a white tail. The underside of the leopard's tail is the part that shows through the most clearly, even though they are very, very cryptically colored. All right, I'm going to need to just take a walk in this drainage line, see if I can't figure out exactly where this animal has gone. We came around at exactly the right moment because they just started alarm calling. So I'm going to get off on foot quickly, go and have a look. While I do that, I'm going to send you back over to James.
I'm just trying to identify what those things are, everybody. They're enormous, sort of about an inch long each, bugs. And I don't know exactly what they are. I'm just paging through the book now, trying to find them. I think it's called a frog. I think they're frog hoppers, or hoppers of some kind. Although they look a bit large, but they are of that sort of shape. Spittlebugs and frog hoppers. Yeah, they do look a little bit big, though. Anyway, they are quite impressive, I think. 30 to 35 millimeter. Well, that's about an inch long. Yep, could well be a spittlebug of some kind. So they've got that kind of blunted nose, as you can see, and elongated back end. I think they're rather spectacular. I think there may be 3 of them there. Was it just 2? Maybe 2 with a much smaller...
Ooh, there's a third.
There's a third. Look at that. Maybe they're beetles. Oh, that's another mating pair. This is unbelievable. And let me just keep looking quickly and see if I can't find them. I don't recognize them from the book, and I have looked through it very often. The way they were flying there made them look a little bit like beetles, rather than there it is. Ha! Exactly. It's a giant jewel beetle. Did you see the way they were flying there? The elytra, which are those things that are sticking out there, are sort of front wings have been modified into a shell. That's what made me think that they were beetles then. This is brilliant. Adults clumsy flyers, it says. Well, I mean, when they're carrying one another, I suppose they must be. Brian, that is spectacular work. That is so awesome. So here you go. That's what they are. A giant jewel beetle. Brilliant. Adults clumsy flyers, it says, often seen around the flowers of acacia, which that's a knob thorn, and female lays very large eggs in soil or simply drops them on the ground. The giant jewel beetle. That is absolutely brilliant. Marvelous. Well done. Good job, Brian. Thank you for tracking those. Highly skilled. Of course, most of you will now feel nauseous, but that's okay. You managed to see a giant jewel beetle in flight. Now, just up ahead, I'm reliably informed by Cedric there are some elephants. Oh, I wouldn't mind catching one of those. I've got to tell you, if it comes anywhere near me, I think I will catch it. No. Very cool. You think it's going to come, Brian?
Maybe.
If it lands within reach, I'm going to try and catch it. No. I'll just rip my hands to shreds if I try and catch it in that tree. Very, very nice to see that. A giant jewel beetle. There's another one. Cindy, in North Carolina, you want to know if we get caterpillars? Sorry, I just want to see if this thing lands, because I think if we can get it close, it'll be really impressive. I think it's gone. You want to know if we get web-making caterpillars like you do in the autumn there. Cindy, I'm not sure which ones you get there. We certainly get some, not web-building, but certainly silk-producing caterpillars out here. And I'm just trying to think of an obvious one. I think most of them produce some kind of silk, and certainly, but nothing that builds a very obvious web. Most obvious sort of home-building caterpillar we have out here, something called a bagworm, which makes itself a nest of sticks. We had one in camp the other day, actually. Yes, in elephants, just up ahead. Two little ones over there, just throwing dust on themselves and showing how tough they are. Beautiful. So we're now quite deep into Arathusa, and so while the elephants do move around a lot, at the moment we've been seeing fairly regular groups. We have been seeing fairly regular groups on. Just going to move my microphone slightly. Seeing fairly regular groups on Djuma, and that female with the third missing from the bottom of her trunk is a good example. Those three young bulls are a good example. And so whether or not I've seen these before, I'm not sure. Let's move a little bit forward. Just sneak slowly off-road here. Have a very quick look. I don't want to disturb the sighting that the guests are having over there. These elephants don't seem to be that fond of cars. There we go, there's one big cow with them. Very large cow just over the top of my head there. But I'm not going to go chasing them through there. It is quite thick in here. There you can see the ears flapping, which of course is very important for heat control in the temperatures that we're having at the moment. And what that does, of course, is it allows that cooled blood to flow into the most important organ in the body, the one organ that you cannot possibly afford to let get too hot. And that, of course, Brian, is the
brain.
Correct. Well done. The brain. If your brain gets too hot, everything else goes kawula. Whereas if your liver gets too hot, it will recover and everything else will recover. And she is talking to those little ones. You can just hear her going, oh. I just love the color that the grey makes, juxtaposed with the green. Hello, Wolfgang. You have described your current question or inquiry as a stupid one, and I don't think it is stupid at all. You want to know if there are more male elephants than female ones. No, I don't think there are at all. I think it's probably pretty much a 50-50 ratio. If anything, it would be skewed towards the females, because the males, of course, have to go off on their own and therefore would be slightly more at risk than the females, not hugely more, because by the time they do go off on their own, they are between 17 and 20 years old, and they're enormous. But certainly, I would imagine the sex ratio is pretty much 50-50. And you can see them loving the grass, just eating and eating and eating this fresh greenery. None of them seem to be picking leaves off the trees or eating the bark like they were 2 or 3 weeks ago. And that's as it should be for this time of year. You might also be able to hear that wonderful slapping sound of the ears coming back onto the body, also slapping off flies that are bugging the elephant. I don't think we should spend too long around here. I think we'll carry on, simply because they are going into some quite thick stuff. Marvellous, thank you very much. I'll head there. Cedric's just telling me that there is another herd of elephants not too far from here, so I think we'll go there. And while we do that, let's go and get an update from Jamie and her tracking.
Well, that was relatively unsuccessful on my behalf. Unfortunately, I'm not quite sure what was going on with those Nyala. I did find a bushbuck. Now, I have never known, ever before, an Nyala to give me a false alarm call. But maybe, just maybe, they got confused with the sight of the bushbuck. I know personally I've made the mistake of thinking a bushbuck was a leopard. Is it still here or is it gone now? Where is it gone? This bushbuck watched me walk all through the drainage line, so I was hoping I'd be able to show it to you. But now, it's disappeared. Whew. Oh well. I'm still not entirely convinced, however. I've never experienced a false alarm call from a Nyala. I walked down, I couldn't find any tracks. Checked the whole of this drainage line area and up onto the other side, sort of thinking maybe if the Nyala had seen above and looked down onto the leopard or across onto the leopard. Still, no sign of any leopard, no tracks in the soft sand either. And I reverse tracked so where the Nyala came from. I walked their path backwards through that drainage line. But I'm not giving up just yet. I'm going to go around to the other side and check from Nyala Road south. See if there isn't any evidence of a leopard coming along in that direction. And then at least we can decide whether or not the Nyala were crying wolf, or at least crying leopard in this case, or whether they did actually see something. Might even just have been a leopard on a mission. We've seen how fast Karula can walk when she wants to. It might have been that the leopard gave itself away because it was just walking in a very straight, direct line somewhere. So by the time I got off the vehicle and on foot in the drainage line, it had moved off. But that, even leopards, no matter how sneaky they are, leopards, their feet have to leave tracks in the sand at some point. That being said, this is one of the hardest areas to track something, this particular road. It's very, very rocky. It's made up of a whole load of small rocks rather than sand. And it's almost impossible to track an elephant on that kind of substrate, let alone something as light-footed as a leopard. Let's go check around the other side, see if we can't spot something from there. Not giving up just yet. And that does bring me back on the subject of not giving up and tracking leopards. and the Inyala alarm calls, that does bring me back to the question that I was answering about things I've learned from animals that I've carried through into my everyday life. And most importantly, as a safari guide, I would say that that level of observation, of watching and listening for any sound, anything out of the ordinary in the bush, is something that I try to implement anywhere I am. And it's actually something that I have difficulty turning off whenever I go to a city. You're so constantly aware of the sounds around you when you live out here. And they play such an important role in your day-to-day life. And this is what happens when you start focusing too hard on leopards. I'm pretty sure I've seen a leopard rock. I don't see it anymore though. No, it's my imagination playing tricks. You never know. Stranger things have happened. And Michelle in New Jersey, you are correct. It does. We do know that Karula, of course, is capable of flying and not leaving any footprints anywhere when she wants to, or at least that is the impression that she gives off to us. She does seem to be able to take off into the sky, especially when crossing roads. You can drive down a road at slower than walking speed looking for that cat's tracks when you know she's walking in that direction. And if she doesn't choose to walk along that road, you won't find where she's crossed. She's so capable of ducking across quickly. The one thing I was careful to do, as unlikely as it is, I think that Karula is still denning to the south of us, but I was exceptionally careful in walking through that drainage line. So there's always, once you lose track of where a leopard's den is, you never know where it is. And although I don't think she would have moved it this far in one go, and I think that she's still on Little Gowrie, so the property to the south of us, I definitely wasn't going to take that for granted. So I very much kept my distance from some of the thicker, more covered areas in there. So, somewhat for my sake, but mostly for hers. I don't think she'd be terribly impressed to find me there. But as I said, I do think that is unlikely. I just don't know for certain. I know that many of you, just as we are incredibly excited to be seeing Karula's cubs. And of course, she's got to very kindly bring them back north across our southern boundary so that we can have a look at them. But most importantly, I think that we can really start getting excited now because they are getting to that age where they're going to be moving out and about a little bit more with mom. And that prospect is something that is, I know I personally am beyond excited to see them. I had one very brief, very accidental glance at her once on Gowrie Main on the southern boundary between game drive times and her new cubs. That was back when she was denning in that little culvert on a main road, on a main access road. So I did see her very briefly then. And what a brief little sort of ball of fluff I saw made me exceptionally excited. And then, of course, not only do we have the prospect of Karula's cubs, but we also have the prospect of Shadow's cubs when she decides to, or when they're old enough to be brought out into the big wide world out there. Something that we're all very much looking forward to. And we are so fortunate because then, of course, it's not just Karula's cubs and Shadow's cubs. There's also the prospect of the two Styx cubs as well, or at least the Styx cubs. We don't know exactly how many she's had. We know where she's denning. They did find her den site. That den site is now closed for to other vehicles, so there's no game drive vehicles allowed to follow her in there. But she's also got brand new cubs for us to look forward to. I'm just trying to cover this bit of ground quickly to get across to Inyala Road South, which is the road that runs on the other side of the drainage line that I just walked in. And there's lion tracks in this road, but I think these are old. These must have been from this morning. These are even older than this morning. These are from 2 days ago. I can tell just by looking at the track where it's lost the clarity of its edges. You can only really see 1 or 2 tracks at a time. And that's when you really get the idea of just how old it really is. We've had some extraordinarily good luck with leopards and lion sightings recently. Leopard, of course, being the more retiring of the two and the harder for us to find. Although I'd say we've done relatively well over the last few days. But Matt was wondering, why are leopards and lions so common? Matt is watching all the way in Nashville. Why are they so common, and why don't we see, for example, more of the other types of cats, for example, cheetah? And Matt, the reason behind that is, first of all, leopards and lions in general are more common than cheetah. Their numbers are higher. And second, and most importantly, in this particular area that we are in, this environment is not the perfect, it's not really the best ecosystem for cheetah. And that, combined with the fact that there are this many or that many lions and that many leopards, the cheetah are actually outcompeted. So cheetah fall right at the bottom of the big predator hierarchy, right below lions, hyenas, wild dogs, leopards. They're right at the bottom of that group. As such, they are often outcompeted and bullied and quite often killed, especially by lions, in areas where those animals are in high density. So they try and avoid them and move about the outskirts. That being said, when we do start to traverse on cheetah plains, which is another really, really exciting prospect, having discussed the cubs, now we've got the possibility of extra traverse area and a new place to go and explore. The cheetah plains has got big gabbro clearings of just grassland, and sort of grassland mixed with a couple of shrubs every now and again, so that a cheetah can sneak up to its prey and yet still have the open spaces to utilize that incredible adaptation and specialization they have in terms of speed. So Matt, we should be seeing, fingers crossed, we should be seeing more cheetah very, very soon. Maybe even to the point that we'll be able to start to really get an idea of their different characters. And Jack, on Twitter, you've mentioned that I forgot about Inkanyeni and who took her 2 cubs on cheetah plains. Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I've been thinking Karula and Shadow. But yes, Inkanyeni, once we do get to cheetah plains, and her cubs are a little bit older, quite a lot older actually. They're close to 4 months old now. They will be a really exciting prospect as well. And Brent, as far as I know, Brent's the only one of us, personally as guides, who has seen them. And he said they are wonderfully relaxed little things. They've just, at this point, opened up sightings of them in appropriate situations to 2 vehicles as opposed to just 1. So by the time we get there, we will be able to see them. That's also something incredibly exciting on the list. Now, as we continue a little way along here, we should come out almost exactly opposite to where I went in walking to that drainage line. And again, checking really carefully for tracks in the sand, and as well as down.
Buffalo, everybody. A breeding herd of buffalo grazing through the verdant lands of Arathusa. And just behind them there's a herd of elephants, but we can't see them at the moment. We have been told that they're around here. And they are just loving this new grass. You see a couple of calves, cows, and the bulls. There will be bulls within the herd, but not the big old chaps that we see normally, especially around the Djuma pan. So we haven't come too far from where we saw the giant jewel bug and then the elephants. And we'll stick around here for a while and see if we can't find the elephants as well. There they come, Brian. You won't see them yet, they're just behind this bush. The elephants are coming north. Can you see them there? Brian's got them, obviously. Brian is a genius. There they are. And isn't the colour just wonderful? Sun slowly starting to soften the light as it sets off to the west there. Couldn't really ask for a better Saturday afternoon, I've got to tell you. I'm just going to sneak forward a bit. I am speaking more quietly when we're around the other vehicles because I don't really feel that they should be subjected to my loud voice. So if you can't hear me, let me know, and I shall speak more clearly and crisply. Now, what is interesting here, Brian, do you notice how these cows are not in as good a shape, I don't think, as the bulls we saw this morning? Their hips are showing, their ribs are showing, and that's probably because they have to spend more time moving around than the bulls do. The bulls just go from water point into the grass, then they eat a bit, and then they go back to the water and chew their cud. But if you're in a big herd like this, you've got to move, because obviously you denude an area of grazing very quickly. So although they're looking better than they did when we went on leave, I must confess that I don't think they're looking particularly wonderful. Just a bit ribby, you can see there, a bit hippie. And of course, for the females, well, this is pretty obvious, as you can see there, just behind this cow is a little baby, just behind that bush. There's a calf, and playing around, and of course, so the nutritional demands on a cow, there it is. And the nutritional demands, as you can see there, far higher on a cow than they're ever going to be on a bull. That's new. That's a very new calf, probably about a week, maybe 2 weeks old. Isn't that sweet? That's very sweet. And just in front of us now, Brian, is coming an elephant. Looks like a cow. And Brian's just going to turn on the VR rig. And of course, the buffalo are a little bit nervous of the elephant, so they're moving out of the way quite quickly. Now, she is definitely looking at us, but now she's moving off. There's a youngster behind. There's a whole herd coming through here. You just speak relatively quietly. Beautiful, just really stunning to see them all together like this. There, you can hear them calling now. So a small herd. I'm not sure, they told me it was an enormous herd, but it's not a very enormous herd at all. Let me just move out the way for these people. Ah, yeah. Good, how are you? All right, so let's quickly go across to Jamie. She's got something really fun to show you.
Linking. We have one very warm Natal spurfowl of Franklin, and I think that's what she's trying to do here, is cool down. We've been walking all the way along the road, dust bathing, or what looks like dust bathing, but not proper dust bathing, and then scratching about in the dirt. But look how she's panting, or he's panting. That really rapid movement of the throat, and the mouth wide open. This is a very hot bird. I actually almost even considered the possibility that this is a bird looking to lay some eggs. Just by that, you see what I mean about these strange actions? Because she digs into the soil, but isn't pulling anything up. So it's not like it's digging for seeds or for food. And not really throwing the dust over the shoulders or the wings in the way that a normal dust bathing bird might usually do. Which sort of is what made me think possibly trying to cool down, or even consider the possibility of looking for a spot to lay. Oh, there we go. Maybe it was just a dust bath. You see the clouds of dust that just went out of her feathers. Actually, it's probably his feathers. I need to look at the spur on the back of the legs to be able to tell you. If it's particularly pronounced, then it's a male. If it's not so pronounced, then it's a female. Here we go. Process being repeated, or are we done now? It looks like a male. Just looking at the spur that I can see there. See that rapid movement of the throat there. Here we go again. Scratch, scratch. It's always beak first, and then scratching with the feet, and then it rests its body down on the dirt. Oh, quick preen. Amazing how this whole process has repeated since I first spotted it, all the way up the road until now. I mean, I guess it is a dust bath, but it's just maybe a little bit more of a lazy dust bath, because he hasn't bothered to fling the dirt over his shoulders. All right, are you done now, Mr. Spurfowl? It's now time to go off in search of grass seeds and other variants. There's one other possibility, and that might be that the spurfowl was picking up tiny, or searching for tiny little rocks to swallow. It's one of the ways that birds, because they don't have teeth, obviously, so they can't chew. So it's one of the ways that they're adapted to compensate for the lack of teeth. And that's to swallow a couple of tiny little round stones that then sit in the bottom of the stomach. And in that process, the powerful muscles of the stomach contract around food, comparatively or proportionately much, much stronger than our stomach muscles. And that essentially masticates, or chews, the food within the stomach rather than within the beak itself. So that might be what that Franklin was doing, but what I think we should do, after we've had all of that advice from Mr. Renius, our great tracking master and trainer, I think perhaps we should go and have a look at the tracks that this bird left. Will you be able to get from there, Vian? And a little bit, I mean, that patch there where it's scratched a little bit higher, or is that a bit too... There we go. There we go. That's what the track in the sand looks like, where a spurfowl has scratched about. There's a little bit there, and there's a little bit higher up as we go. If we go a little bit higher, we can see the claw marks. Oh, sorry, didn't take my foot off the brake. You can see all the claw marks and scratch marks and scuffles. So, there you go. For those of you who are fortunate enough to be watching this afternoon, you will never be bamboozled if I ever stop to ask you about a track that looks like that. And there goes the Franklin's feet. Him tracking him beautifully on the camera. And there you have it. 3 toes of roughly about, or a track about 6 centimeters in length, 2 inches in length. You're going to all be building up your track scrapbook that we've been speaking about on the last few drives. Different screenshots of different types of tracks. And tracking is not just about the leopards and the lions, it's about the little things like that as well. We had a question about, in sort of explanation as to what that bird might have been doing. And Rebecca has suggested that perhaps it was to do with a process known as anting. Now, anting is where, for those of you unfamiliar with birds, anting is where a bird settles down over an ant's nest and lets the ants crawl all over it in order to rid it of, and they will actually go and they'll clean the mites and the parasites off the bird's feathers. The other thing that happens in that whole process is ants often will release, or certain species of ants will release a formic acid that will also help to almost fumigate the bird's feathers and the way the bird's sort of the spines along the feathers and keep them clean and free from parasites. And for a bird, with its feathers and its wings being such a crucial part of the way that it moves and the way that it flies, that is, keeping those feathers clean and pristine and in good order is such an essential part of its day-to-day business. One last really careful check for any leopard tracks on this corner, because when they do enter the drainage line, it's usually around these pans and these puddles. There's a lot of game paths here that I've tracked leopard down before. So Rebecca, the reason I don't think it was anting, although that was an exceptionally good guess, is just because I couldn't see any ant's nest anywhere along there, or ant paths. And in fact, I couldn't see any trails of ants either, or bits of sand that had been dug up from underground. So whilst it was a very good explanation, I don't think in this particular case that is what was happening. To witness nevertheless. And dust bath does actually in a way work in a similar way to anting itself, in that they're throwing the textured dirt over them and it gets into the gaps within the feathers themselves, and sort of once they've shaken that out, it catches trapped tiny little pepper ticks and tiny little mites and fleas even that would be sitting on the bird's feathers. Continue with my original plan, since there's no sign of any leopards walking here at all, and I feel deeply, deeply betrayed by those Nyala. I'm going to continue on to Buffelshoek Dam instead. In the meantime, let's find out what James's plans are.
I'm afraid those elephants disappeared, but there are apparently reports of others all over Arathusa, and we're not too far now from the Arathusa Dam, which is good news. Tracks of hyena here, evidence of elephants, of course. This piece of branch was picked off and broken by an elephant at some stage during the day. It's even scraped some of the bark. You see that, Brian? Astonishing stuff. All right, let's carry on before the excitement becomes too overwhelming for us. Well done, Brian. Stout fellow. So we're going to have a look at the water at Arathusa. I haven't seen any since the rain. Interesting question from Kathy here. So many of you would have seen the Safari Live story that we put out on that elephant with a hole in its ear that initially caused trouble with Scott, then it caused a bit of trouble with me, Jamie's had some trouble with him, and then Brent very nicely rounded off the story by sort of having an experience with him. And Kathy, you want to know, once he's crossed that line where he becomes sort of the line basically is where an animal starts to interact with you rather than just carry on with its life around you. And that elephant has crossed that line. You want to know, will he ever be taught not to cross the line? I think to a large extent, we saw him yesterday and he didn't cross the line again. He sort of kept to himself. And I think to a large extent, there's an impala, which is now running away. But Kathy, to a large extent, yes, it is possible. I think if he learns that vehicles are not going to tolerate him. Certainly, Brent banged on the door once or twice and he went away. I reversed at him once or twice and he went away. So I think once he learns that that's going to be the case and that we won't really tolerate it, yeah, I hope that he will learn the lesson. The other thing, though, is that I think he was coming into must, and he's certainly in full-blown must now. We did see him yesterday dripping profusely between his legs, which is of course the clearest sign of must. And so when he initially touched Scott's vehicle, it's quite possible that what was happening was that he was going into must, that he was in a sort of proto-must, if you like, and that could well have been the reason that he did that. His approach to Tara Piri, which was last year, is a little bit more interesting, but it's also not unusual because elephants do investigate women, especially if they happen to be menstruating. Elephants are renowned for being able to sense that, and they will approach women if that is the case. So that's quite interesting. Nice question, that. Thank you, Kathy. Let's get up towards the dam now. See what we can find there. Not much going on. I will tell you though that Shadow has been found. Cubs are okay on the main road. Unfortunately, we're not going to view those cubs before they're 2 months old, so we've got another 4 weeks to wait before we view them. But I think if we see Karula's cubs, we would definitely have a look at them. Regardless, we're going to have some very nice cub action fairly soon. So Debbie, your question, you're in Vancouver, and it's a very good question, is if, 2 months old, would Karula start moving with the cubs? That's precisely why, Debbie, we would be prepared to view them at 2 months old. She will normally move a little bit with them. They will also be able to climb trees, and so that will help them to get away from any predators that might come near them. And that's why 2 months is a nice, safe age at which to be viewing them. Right, we are now at the water, where there are only impala and a waterbuck. The waterbuck is going to have dinner at Arathusa today, I see that. We will go along this way, actually. Somebody waving at me from the pool. Right. Nora, you're on Twitter and you want to know the difference between Arathusa and Vuyatela lodges and how far away they are. Let me just stop over here. The distance between the two is only, actually, as the crow flies, probably about, about 3 miles? So not very far, maybe 4 miles. Not far at all. Vuyatela, of course, is what we call self-catering, in that they don't, they don't provide food for you. You've got to bring that in or order it in advance. But Arathusa is different from that. So there you can see Arathusa Lodge, and there's a waterbuck there, some impala lurking around on the island. And this, this dam hasn't filled up a great deal, I don't think, since the rain. I'm sure there's a bit more water in it, but not a huge amount. And that delightful sound is the sound of frolicking children in the Arathusa pool. I think they belong to the manager. Wonderful place to grow up, of course, the bush. Anyway, let's move on from here. And butterflies all over. You can see as we're driving along here all the different flowers that are producing or exciting all of the butterflies. And Paul Rizzo, you want to know if we can go to the Arathusa airstrip? Absolutely, we are on our way there now. Beautiful monarch butterflies, there's green, sort of mint green vagrants, or migrants, sorry. This is interesting. Just quickly, this young male here, who was relieving himself on the midden there, you see that, Brian? On a midden just behind, and impala will often do this. They go to the loo on the same spot. You can hear them. Right, on we go. So now we're going into the slightly thicker bush that lines the drainage line that feeds Arathusa Dam. And then we will head towards the airstrip. No sign of those two mating leopards, which is a bit sad. Brian, on the road is a little squirrel. You see him there. Isn't that sweet? Squirrel standing up and looking. So sweet. And that is the African tree squirrel. Just enjoying the last rays of the sun. Interesting question from Tony here about the leopards, and we were talking about leopards earlier, and Tony, you're in Holland and you want to know about the new leopard, Djuma, who's a bit nervous, and Brent was doing some wonderful stuff habituating him the other day, and you want to know if he would be able to challenge at this stage for a territory, or is he too young, or would he be able to hang around and then challenge for a territory? As far as I know, there's a bit of controversy over his age at the moment. He looks to me like about a 5-year-old leopard, which means that he is going to be slightly too young at this stage to take a territory. In a year or two, he will be big enough, and I think that it's worth his while hanging around precisely where he is, simply because Mvula is not a youngster anymore, and he is kind of in Mvula's territory. Oh, what I think I saw through there. Bless you, Brian. Bless you, Brian. Blessings. And therefore probably quite a good idea for him to hang around precisely where he is. So in 2 years' time or so, he may well be able to challenge Mvula for his territory. But we'll see. These things so seldom play out the way we think they are going to. Mvula might have another 2 or 3 years in him. That's a very good inquiry. And of course, we don't really know where Djuma's come from. We're not sure what his ancestry is. Brent also very cleverly collected some of his scat the other day, so we'll send that in for DNA analysis. And with any luck, that Panthera data will come out fairly soon, and we'll be able to tell exactly who's related to who. The males, of course, will often come from outside the area, and that's really good for the genetic, sort of the depth of the genetic pool, if you like. And so hopefully he has come from away from the area and isn't related to Mvula or Djuma, at least Mvula or Tingana. And I mean, likewise, while we don't really want Djuma and Quarantine to have to go somewhere else, because they are great fun to watch, it will probably be a very good thing if they did go somewhere else, because that would then increase the genetic pool wherever they happen to go. Right, we're now approaching the Arathusa International Airstrip, where there seems to be quite a conflagration of aircraft, 2 at least. It's like Heathrow. Let's go around the corner here. And Jenny, Debbie in Vancouver, you reckon that we should be looking for jackals on the airstrip? It would be wonderful to see some jackals. Just so few of them in the Sabi Sands here. I'm not really sure why. There's a whole lot of squirrel activity here in this tree. Look, 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 look. Look at them there, 2. Look at that. I think that's just friendly. Isn't that fantastic? And you did see those jackals, I remember now, I read about it on the airstrip with Brent a little while back. Isn't that fantastic? Watching us as excitedly as we're watching them. That's a young one. I don't think it's an adult, and I think there's probably 2 or 3 siblings with a mother. Haven't yet gone totally independent. Listen to the birds in the background.